Welcome to the Donley Auctions Unfiltered Podcast, where history meets the highest bidder. Hi, I'm Susan.
And I'm Randy Donley.
And along with our trusty auction dog, Tucker, we're here to bring you the thrill of the auction, the behind-the-scenes scoop, and everything in between. We've got amazing stories behind the treasures, even some crazy stories you wouldn't believe, insider tips for both buyers and consigners, and maybe even a cameo or two from Tucker the auction dog. So whether you're a seasoned collector or just dipping your toes in, get ready for a wild ride through the world of auctions.
Join us each week on your favorite podcast platform, but for the best experience, tune into this podcast on a platform that supports video like YouTube or Spotify. We've got some great visuals to enhance every episode. Hi, I'm Randy Donley from Donley Auctions here in Union, Illinois, here with my brother Mike.
How you doing?
Good. And we're actually getting ready a little later today. We're going to be using this scenery here as our Christmas photo. So we've got everybody coming in today, the staff coming in for a Christmas photo. You'll see that online. But today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Phonograph show. I've mentioned on the podcast before that we would talk a little bit more about the Phonograph show, which, oddly enough, we started in, 73?
74.
74 was the first, so that would make the show, the Antique Phonograph Show, 50 years ago that we started it. And it grew and grew and grew. But before we even start with that, I need to clear something up, okay? I ask you all the time for your comments on the podcast, what you like, what you don't like. And what I heard overwhelmingly from our last podcast was you didn't like the fact that I used the phrase old ladies. And I am so sorry. I meant no offense by it, but this is called an unfiltered podcast, and we're going to talk the way we talk. So, I did not intentionally mean to offend anybody for using the expression old ladies, but...
Can we use old men?
Yeah, isn't that funny? If we said old men, nobody'd be complaining, would they? Old ladies, they didn't like it.
We'd just be talking about ourselves.
We would. So, the Phonograph show, we want to talk a little bit about for this reason. It really fits into a lot of what's happening in the antiques world. And that is prices have somewhat crashed amongst most collector items that we used to refer to as antique collections and everything. But one of the big problems in antique collecting as we've known it for the past 50, 60, 70 years is that there's very few young people collecting what we refer to as antiques anymore, and therefore there's more supply than there is demand. And the typical supply and demand, if there's not enough demand, then prices go down. And that is what's happening in so many fields. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. With prices down, it's a great time to collect.
Right.
Mm-hmm. You can really buy at great rates. So if you've got a big collection that you paid a lot of money for, you don't like to hear that prices have gone down. But in most cases, we're told all the time that, well, the prices don't really affect me because I didn't pay a lot for it 50 years ago. Even though prices went up and prices have now come down, most people that own phonographs, music boxes, and everything really aren't that badly affected.
No, and a lot we hear time and time again, they'll say it was never about the money.
It was never about the money.
They enjoyed collecting it.
Yeah. So I've got a couple examples of what the Phonograph show used to be. Hi, I'm Randy from Donley Auctions in Union, Illinois, and I'm playing a 3-disc symphonian music box which will be for sale this weekend, July 15th. The Phonograph show was here in Union at the Donley's Wild West Town. Started in '74, and people would come from all over the world, not just the country, all over the world to this site in Union to both buy and sell antique phonographs and music boxes. And here's a typical Regina music box, a beautiful serpentine cabinet in oak, 15.5-inch music box, a great piece, and used to be a great investment. Mike and I watched these start at probably in our collecting years about $800, go up to about $4,500. And now what are they back down to now? $1,500?
$1,500 maybe. Yeah.
So up and down. But again, it's a perfect time to be buying these because prices are very affordable right now. Now, that's not always the case with all phonographs or music boxes. If they're particularly rare, like this is what we refer to as a Victor Monarch Special, an MS. It's an oak cabinet, very fancy cabinet with a beautiful oak spear tip horn on it and everything. Now, you can buy a similar phonograph with it like this for $1,200, but this machine will probably still hit $3,500, maybe a little more. So good rare pieces have still held their price. And but what about the phonograph show? What do you think? I mean, it's still going on.
Yeah, the Antique Phonograph Society has taken it over for the last 3 years. They hold it in Schaumburg, Illinois now.
And they're headquartered in California.
They're out of Victorville, California, yes. And I think they're going to do it the third week in June. We traditionally did it always on the second weekend in June, but I think this year they're holding it on the third week of June. There was some conflict with the hotel or something.
Gotcha. And it's held where now?
In Schaumburg, Illinois, at the Hyatt, I believe.
At the Hyatt Hotel.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so it's still well attended. There's still a lot of dealers there. I still go to it every year and set up for the auctions there. I would say that there are some new faces starting to show up into it and branching out into records. And one of the things that we were always constrained by was space here. In fact, the building we're sitting in got built because of the phonograph show.
It was we built it instead of using tents.
Yeah, we were using tents every year and getting rained out. Every year the tents would get rained out. We have floods coming to the tents, and Randy and I would be out there digging trenches to direct the water to the tents. We built the buildings and it never rained again, of course, so.
That's a fact. That's no joke. People used to refer to the show as the Union Flood. Yeah. And but in fact, once we put up a nice building, the weather was not a factor.
Anyway, getting back to it, we were constrained by space because we actually built 2 buildings and had them full all the time, and we still overflow had tents outside.
Yeah, and there's the total here. There's about 15,000 feet.
Yeah, and
not enough, not nearly enough.
So then we had the pavilion too out there. So
another 3,600 feet.
It still wasn't enough. So there was dealers that wanted to come in that had electronic items, electronic turntables, early stereos and such, which was the transition of where the hobby is starting to move a little bit. We couldn't have those dealers here because we were sold out on our indoor space, and the guys who had the electronics in no way, shape, or form, and I agree with them, did not want to set up outside under humid weathers and stuff like that. Yeah, you can't do that with electronics. So I think with the new show, I think they're going to see that moving into that now. Some radios and such, but some stereos and turntables and things like that. But again, I've seen a lot of new faces there, which is good for the hobby. Some of the stuff that used to turn up, Randy and I'd be so busy running the show, stuff would be walking in the door, rare stuff.
Rare pieces.
The dealers would just go nuts, some of the early stuff that was coming in. I remember the day the car pulled up with all the WLS microphones and studio coming in the back.
And all we could do is stand there and watch it because, again, our job was to run the show. Even though we were collectors, we were running the show, and all this great merchandise coming and going and passing us by. We never bought at the show, did we?
No. And some of the stuff had come in. It was just being pulled out of attics in those days, and it would change hands 2, 3, 4 times at a show. Going up and up in price each time.
Yeah.
You know, something that maybe walked in the door for $500. By the end of the show, it'd be selling for $5,000.
Yeah, it would be like a crazy day at the stock market with prices, people screaming and just, yeah, how much, how much, how much? That was the old days of the show, is that you don't see anywhere
Friday
anymore.
was dealer setup day, and people paid extra high admission just to get in and be able to be on the floor to buy when all the good stuff was walking in the doors. So, not that there wasn't good stuff at the show, but you know, having first crack at it was always the big thing.
And this is one thing that I want to always point out about collecting. When we keep saying there's no young collectors or there's nobody collecting phonographs and music boxes, I always want to bring it back to the time frame when we were collectors. We're talking the 1970s and as early as the 1960s. So we were collecting stuff from the 1910s and the 1920s. And when you think about it, those items were only 50 years old. Although we thought of them as real, old antique items, because technology changed so much, stuff looked weird and antique and everything. But it was only 50 years old. So here in 2024, if you go back 50 years and say that is when you want to collect 50 years back, what do we have? 74?
Yeah.
1974. So in fact, people may be collecting, I got to check my phone here. Oh, Steve Oliphant from California, the Phonograph Show.
Head of the Phonograph
What's the
Show.
chances? I'm going to take this. Hey, Steve, how you doing?
This was not planned.
Hey, good, good. You're actually on our podcast right now. My phone was ringing. We're doing a podcast, and we were actually calling you to check on the dates. We wanted to put it on the podcast. Wanted to check on the dates for the Phonograph Show. Okay, it's potentially the last weekend in June. We will keep you apprised with that.
And at the Schaumburg Hyatt again, or
At the Hyatt again? Good. It's at the Hyatt in Schaumburg, and I'm going to hang up, Steve, with you right now, and I'll call you after our podcast. Okay. Bye for now. There you go. What's the timing of that? What's the chances? But at any rate, here we go. So, when we say, again, collectors, young people today, if they're collecting 50 years ago, they're collecting stuff from the 70s, they're collecting stuff from the 80s. And we, old timers like us, don't see items like that as old or antique. Just like when my dad was a collector, people didn't understand why he would have wanted an antique phonograph or a music box. Because the people that were selling them to him never thought of them as being old enough to be collectible.
so when you live with something in the time period, you don't think of it as anything. You know.
Mid-century modern.
Yeah.
We don't think of furniture and appliances and everything from the 70s and 80s as being collectible.
I shudder when I even look at that stuff. And you take a young person like, oh, look at this vintage Mixmaster. And it's like, why would you want that?
Well, just the other day, I saw online some typewriters selling for like $200-300, and Mike and I looked at them and said, if we saw those typewriters at a flea market, we would not give you $5 for them. They're just not old enough. Not to us, but to the new generation. So when you think about antiques, you have to really understand who the collectors are and what the market is. Just like early computers are hot. I mean, Game Boy toys, Star Wars toys. We're still trying to peddle antique wind-up tin toys or heavy cast iron toys from the turn of the century and everything. And even though, yes, there are collectors for that, the new generation of collectors has forgotten about that, and they're on to items they remember.
Transformers, things like that
Yep.
are big. They're collecting early cell phones now. They're like you say, computers, anything of the early electronics.
Do you remember our first not a cell phone, but our first mobile phone was
the bag phone.
The bag phone.
Yeah.
You used to wear it over your shoulder and have a big bag, and boy, didn't we think we were hot at the auctions in those days.
Yeah.
Stand there with a phone, oh yeah, we were the guys. So, so at any rate, we'll talk more about this. Anything you want to add to this point right now? We'll come back.
No, other than the fact that we'll probably in the spring be having a phonograph and a music box. And,
Good point.
And I want to add technology too. You know, anything, early telephones, lighting, typewriters, telegraph, any of that early invention technology items, any early electrical thing, early electrical appliances. I mean, people collect them. Toasters, things like that. It'd be crazy what people pay for some of this early technology.
So, coming up, keep in mind, phonographs, primarily phonographs with horns, music boxes, the bigger the better. We have some here that stand 8 foot tall. So here's another interesting point. You know, we keep pushing because just in a few weeks, or less than 2 weeks right now, we've got the Civil War auction. Just today, Mike found out that he was on his way to somewhere in Tennessee. Where in Tennessee?
Franklin, Tennessee for the big Nashville Civil War show. I'll be down there this weekend.
So he's going there, and he's also picking up in Tennessee a license plate collection.
License plate collection in Memphis.
And then
in
big military.
Owensboro, Kentucky, and a big military collection too.
And this military collection is fabulous. It's a World War II veteran. We love you guys, those of you that are still
96 years old, all the stuff he brought back.
And he's all his veteran items and items that he picked up overseas, German war souvenirs and things that he brought home, daggers, and all this is going to be authentic. So
fresh to the market too, and it'll be the first time
yeah,
out.
never been for sale before. It's always been owned by the same veteran. Make sure you get a lot of good photos of you with him.
Yeah,
there's the provenance.
As we've said in the past, on certain times when we're buying stuff, this may be the last time this will ever happen again.
Yeah.
You know, because there's not many vets left, especially the vets who have their stuff yet.
You bet. So again, I'm not going to sign off right now because we'll be talking a little bit more today. Let's hear a little music box action. Good morning, Al.
Good morning. Good morning. Good
Al
morning.
Morehouse is with us today.
Hi.
Al's here. We're talking about some artwork that Al has purchased over the year. Who is it? Dan Meyer Art?
Dan Meyer. Yeah, and Dan Meyer was, he just passed away in September this year. He was 67 years old. And
now, I got to stop you there, Al. Okay. You've been in the art collecting world for years and years, and you've got one of the best art collections I've ever seen. Now, Dan Meyer passes away. The old myth in the industry is, well, now that the art has passed away, the prices are going to go up. Any truth to that? Or
I'm not
is that
sure.
Just,
I'm not sure. I mean, I think that used to be the case. But when they say in the future, they don't mean next week
Not
or next
immediate
month
future.
or maybe even 10 years. Somewhere he's going to be known as where his works are and were and are pretty impressive.
Okay.
So Dan not only was an oil painter, but he really worked more in three-dimensional art.
These are some pieces that you are actually donating to Focus.
Right.
They do phenomenal work for blind people or people with eye damage and everything. And primarily, they work overseas. And they're having a fundraiser at the San Filippo Mansion. And Al has donated this piece.
The name of the piece is called Vanishing Species.
Vanishing Species.
Because Dan himself was kind of a naturalist, and he and all these things. So the horns, you know, the elephants are vanishing, the gazelles, and all the things depicted around the chair, and it was just a different piece, and I just enjoyed it. And he only did one of those.
So this is a one-off.
So one-off, yeah, only one.
Wow.
You know, and it's made mostly of wood. But chair art became really, really popular at one time. I mean, I think $500 would be a good starting bid. I mean, and you know, if someone's going to like it, they're going to like it. I mean, you know, and you know how auctions are. Unless you get started reasonably, you have no chance.
Okay, as you see, I got a little bit of Al Morehouse talking about some of the items, the artwork that he actually donated to Focus. Focus is a wonderful charity right in Barrington, Illinois, who does phenomenal work, ophthalmology work for areas that can't in the world that can't necessarily afford that type of work. They all the doctors donate their help and time. So, as a matter of fact, if you are looking for a charity this winter with the Christmas season coming up to support, Focus is a phenomenal organization. Please go to their website and you'll find them in Barrington. Again, great organization. So, having said that, we'll see you again next week. And for now, I'm Randy Donley, and I'll see you at the auction.